I want to thank my colleagues, Senators Whitehouse. Can we get some quiet here, please? I want to thank my colleagues, Senators Whitehouse, Coons, and Hirono, for joining me, all members of the Judiciary Committee. Now, for months, we've heard our Republican colleagues say there's no reason to pass legislation to protect Special Counsel Mueller and the Russia probe from President Trump. They've relied on anonymous White House officials who've assured them there was no effort afoot to undermine or get rid of the special counsel, so there was no need to pass legislation to protect him. Well, with a few words last night, President Trump made it frighteningly clear that he may be considering firing Special Counsel Mueller. Our Republican colleagues must not continue ignoring the elephant in the room. We Democrats are urging our Republican colleagues to work with us now, pass legislation to protect this investigation, and head off a constitutional crisis that would be devastating to this country. Let's not wait until it's too late. I heard what Leader McConnell said. Why not pass the legislation now and avoid a constitutional crisis? That makes eminent sense if you believe what so many of our Republican colleagues have said, that it would be a constitutional crisis if Mueller were fired. Let's not wait until it's too late. Let's take the threat of a crisis off the table right now. The rule of law cannot be, should not be turned into a partisan issue. The Congress must speak clearly, loudly, with one voice by passing legislation to ensure that any effort by the President to remove Director Mueller or Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein would be unsuccessful. I plead with Senator McConnell. Support this legislation. Put it on the floor now. Let's debate it. Let's pass it. Let's do so before the President creates a constitutional crisis, which looks more and more like a possibility. I'd also like to make one final point. A number of news reports in the last several hours have described Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein's role in everything that's transpired over the last 24 hours. I'd like to make something crystal clear to the President. Mr. President, any attempt to remove Rod Rosenstein will create the exact same constitutional crisis as if you fired Special Counsel Mueller. Don't do it. Do not go down this path. For the sake of our country, we plead with you. Don't put this country through a constitutional crisis, whether by firing Mueller, Rosenstein, or otherwise impeding this investigation from going forward. The rule of law is paramount in this country. No man, not even the President, is above it. Senator Whitehouse.
Every prosecutor who has been following the recent news is connecting these dots. First, that the likeliest target of the search warrants executed at Michael Cohen's office and residence is Michael Cohen. Given the very high Department of Justice and judicial standards for such a search warrant, the second connection is the likelihood of ultimate criminal charges resulting being non-trivial. Third, if those criminal charges are brought, the likeliest outcome is a plea. Very few federal criminal cases go to trial. And finally, in any plea agreement, cooperation with government investigators provides an important determinant of sentencing. All of this means that there is now a new, real, non-trivial prospect that Michael Cohen ends up cooperating with the Department of Justice, that Trump's lawyer, fixer, and keeper of secrets may become a federal witness. That is a connection of dots that it appears the president has made as well in his rantings yesterday. And the pressure that the president has put on the Department of Justice with his statements in turn puts pressure on our Republican colleagues here to declare firmly that presidential meddling in these ongoing investigations will not be tolerated in Congress, and to come together in bipartisan fashion and make sure that appropriate measures are taken before the crisis explodes on us. We need to hear from our Republican colleagues now and clearly. Thank you.
Senator Coons.
Rule of law is one of the foundations on which our constitutional order, our republic, rests. Around the world, the United States has long been recognized for having a world-class judiciary, for having a wise structure in terms of separation of powers, and having a Department of Justice which pledges allegiance not to any one president, but to the Constitution. Now, all of these fundamental principles are being challenged now in the ways that President Trump is responding to developments in the investigation being led by Special Counsel Mueller and in separate developments in New York City yesterday. On a bipartisan basis, my colleagues have stepped forward and said in recent days and over many months that Special Counsel Mueller must be allowed to continue his investigation to its logical conclusion, that to interfere with his investigation would be irresponsible, would create a constitutional crisis, would be political suicide. And I'm paraphrasing senior Republicans and Democrats. But unfortunately, this has mostly been statements, not actions. Senator Tillis joined with me months ago in introducing a bipartisan bill that would take existing protections in Department of Justice regulations that say the special counsel cannot be fired unless for cause, and strengthens them by providing clarity about the timing of judicial remedy and about the process that would be followed, and by putting it in statute. It is long past time for us to move forward with this legislation. Other legislation introduced by other bipartisan partners, including Senator Whitehouse, Senator Booker, Senator Graham, also should move forward. And it is my real hope that our Republican colleagues will recognize that given the statements of President Trump in recent days and hours, it seems increasingly to be no longer a question of if, but when President Trump might take a reckless and irresponsible step to fire either Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein or Special Counsel Robert Mueller, directly or indirectly. As my mom said when I was a kid, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Rather than dismissing this as a hypothetical, I think senior leaders in the Republican Party need to join with senior leaders in our party and recognize this is the moment for this body to take up its constitutional role and act to make less likely this irresponsible potential action by our president. Thank you.
Senator Hirono.
It bears repeating that the fundamental difference between a democracy and a dictatorship is the rule of law. And we have a president who doesn't believe in the rule of law. He thinks that the Department of Justice and the FBI work for him. These entities do not work for him. They are there to protect the Constitution and follow the rule of law. Now, the president, in his recent statements and tweets, have opened the door for consideration for a lot of us, because he said, oh, a lot of people have said that I should fire Mueller. And so I think there is a sense of urgency for all of us who want to protect Robert Mueller's investigation to continue, to do so, to take the action now. And we just heard Majority Leader McConnell say that he doesn't believe that the president is going to fire Mueller, or indeed Rosenstein, which would be another way to fire Mueller. Well, if we have a president who is totally unpredictable, who changes his mind all the time. I don't know on what basis our leader, Majority Leader, says that he doesn't believe that the president is not going to fire Mueller. He's already opened the door to that by saying, a lot of people have said that I should fire Mueller. So what is preventing us from taking action so that we can prevent the firing of Mueller? It's very simple. we should, in a bipartisan way, enact the legislation that's already been introduced, as my colleagues have mentioned. The time is now.
Thank you, Senator Hirono. We're ready for some questions. Yes. Look, we hope we can avoid it, and we hope that Congress will pass legislation to make sure it doesn't happen. That's as far as we're going to go right now. Yes.
Senator McConnell said he would take up a rescissions package from the House as well as likely a balanced budget amendment over here. Would your caucus block both of those?
Look, the bottom line is the balanced budget amendment's been around for a long time, and our Republican colleagues ought to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. After creating a huge deficit with the tax bill, they want to pass a balanced budget amendment. That means one of two things. A, they're not serious. B, they want to cut Medicare and Social Security. We will fight them tooth and nail on that. On rescissions, it's going to be a lot harder for them to get that done even on their side of the aisle.
Do you think, though, that there are some things that they could come to you and say, why don't we cut here, cut there? And
we made a deal.
Or is it Halliburton?
We've made an agreement. I hope they won't go back on it.
We've continued to consult between the lead sponsors of these two pieces of legislation over the last couple of months. I'm renewing those conversations today, I think with greater urgency, and we'll hopefully find greater receptivity.
Thank you, everybody.
One thing, if I could add, one thing that would be very helpful on that is if Chairman Grassley would schedule a markup so that there's some impetus to take the two bills and work out the differences and get this done.
Good point, because you've already heard those bills.
Yes.
Judiciary.
Thank you.